Owning and caring for a dog is a tremendous responsibility, and it's one that not everyone is prepared for. As a result, far too many people who find themselves unable to care for their pets end up surrendering them to adoption agencies. Sadly, some can't even manage that. When a Miami couple, Alex and Stephanie, found poor Ganesh, a Dogo Argentino mix, he was alone, starving, and tied to a tree behind an abandoned home. He was clearly neglected by his owner and terrified of human contact. And the pair knew they had to step in themselves if they wanted to save him. Except they didn't realize just how complicated that would become. It's a sad reality, but not everyone is capable of taking care of their pets, and sometimes the situation requires outside help. Two Miami residents named Alex and Stephanie realized this firsthand when they were told about a dog chained to a tree behind an empty house. Sure enough, the dog was all alone and he didn't look to be in good shape. Alex and Stephanie knew that they had to take action or this poor pooch wouldn't make it much longer. With food and a leash in hand, they carefully approached the emaciated animal. The dog, whom they named Ganesh, was understandably nervous, and he barked at them as they approached. It was no wonder. After being mistreated by humans the way Ganesh had been, it was only natural that he'd be a little suspicious of strangers. Ganesh had clearly been left alone and tied up in the backyard for quite some time. He was thin and filthy, and that was just what was visible. Who knew what sort of illnesses he might have had? It was likely that his emotional scars went a lot deeper, too. After eyeing Alex and Stephanie warily, Ganesh's hunger took over and he eagerly wolfed down the food and water they brought him. Thankfully, he seemed to warm up to them once he realized that they weren't going to hurt him. As it turned out, all Ganesh needed was a little bit of love and a little bit of grub. He stopped barking and he even allowed Alex and Stephanie to pet him. He was still very nervous, but it was clear that he was in much better hands than before. Who would do this to such a sweet dog? Before long, Ganesh was wagging his tail and was happily following along as he was led by leash to Alex and Stephanie's home. Who knew how long it had been since he was able to leave his yard? It was like he could sense that things were looking up. Ganesh relaxed even more once Alex and Stephanie gave him a much-needed bath. He had lots of bugs on him from being chained outdoors for so long, but with a little soap and a lot of scrubbing, he was finally clean. Once he was all clean, it was time for Ganesh to come inside Alex and Stephanie's home to dry off and explore the warm house. It seemed that he couldn't believe his good luck. First food, then a walk, then a bath, and now this? Like any good dog, Ganesh eagerly offered up kisses to express his gratitude. It was clear that this pooch felt exceptionally grateful for having met Alex and Stephanie and being allowed to stay with them. Even though Ganesh had been through a tremendous amount of pain and suffering, he wasn't going to let it put a damper on his spirits in the least. Before long, he was eagerly playing. But one question loomed. What did his future hold? Talk about a dog with a truly loving heart and resilient spirit. Ganesh wasn't going to let anything keep him from living his best life, no matter what things were like before he was rescued, or how things would be in the future. Alex and Stephanie knew that it still wasn't going to be an easy road, but they were committed to helping Ganesh. They were completely invested in his well-being. Still, the price tag for doing so was starting to add up. The pair went online to share their story about Ganesh's rescue, and they received quite the reaction. People were so immensely moved by the pooch's story that they wanted to help however they could. Donations came pouring in from people all over, and thanks to their generosity, Alex and Stephanie were able to cover all of Ganesh's expenses. It looked like Ganesh would get his happy ending that he deserved. Soon enough, Ganesh was being treated by a veterinarian, and he was well on his way to recovery. With his every need being met, all that was left for him to do was sit back and enjoy all the attention. Alex and Stephanie, along with all of their friends who helped to support Ganesh's recovery, couldn't have been happier with how much his life had turned around. He was still very skinny, but he acted like a totally different dog altogether. Making the decision to step into that backyard was one of the best Alex and Stephanie made, and Ganesh's loving face was proof of that. There wasn't a person he met who he didn't adore. Now all Ganesh needed was to find himself a forever home. Once he was fully recovered, he'd be able to live a happy and healthy life the way he deserved. So many dogs don't get a second chance, and it was all thanks to two caring strangers. And speaking of caring strangers,